Hello, my name is Evan Dangol. In this video, I'm going to teach you about a function in a C. So basically, let me answer a question. What is a function? A function is a set of statements that take inputs, do some computation, and produces output. The idea is to put some commonly or repeatedly done tasks together and make a function, so that instead of writing same code again and again for different inputs, we can call the function. A function definition in a C programming consists of a function header and a function body. As you can see in line number 16, I have a function header which consists of three things. First part is return type, then after that is a function name, and after that parameter list. This is called function header. And inside this curly bracket, I have a body of function which is basically a code that does something. And here is the real example of a function. Here int, this is return type, and after that add, which is function name, and I have int x comma and int y, they are parameters. And body of function, I have here return x plus y. So let me explain you what is this return type, function name, parameter list, and body of function. Now return type means it's a function can return a value. It is like just like an output from a function. When you do some when you call function and the function does something, then it it may return a value, so which is a return type. And after that we have function name. It is the name of function. It can be anything. I have written here add, so the function name can be anything, and the function name is required part. Yeah, the return type also required. That means we cannot omit it. Even if a function doesn't return anything, we must write return type. In this case, we must write void. If a function doesn't return anything, we have to write void. Void means nothing or empty. It doesn't return anything, but we still have to write return type. And parameters. Now, what is a parameter? Parameter is like an input given to a function, and we may give or we may not give. It is optional. So parameter is not compulsory. We just omit. We can omit this parameter part. And function body is required part. The function body contains collection of statements that define what function does, and it is required. As you can see in this example, int is return type. Int means integer. So this function basically returns integer. And add, this is function name, which is also required. And in the bracket, inside this bracket, I have int x and int y, two integers I'm giving input. I'm giving two integers as an input to this function, so this is optional. You can omit this int x and int y altogether. And return x plus y. So we are giving two integers, that is two numbers, and returning the sum of those two numbers. This is one function. This is one function. Now let me describe about types of functions. Yeah, there are basically four types of functions. Sorry, one, it is three, and this is four. Number one, doesn't return anything and does not take any parameters. As you can see in this function, I have void. So void basically means empty or nothing. That means this function does not return anything, and it doesn't take any parameters. You can see here there is empty parenthesis or bracket, unlike this function which has x and y. So this function does not return anything and does not take any parameters. Void add, and after that it's a curly bracket, and inside the curly bracket I have a body of function which is just printing this 3 plus 5. That means whatever value. And now second type of function, we have return some value but does not take any parameters. Now as you can see, integer, this function is returning integer, but it doesn't take any parameters. Yeah, and the name of the function is still add. And since we are saying that this function returns something, we have to return something, and it can just be something. Yeah, when we write this int as a integer as a return type, that means we have to return integer. So 3 is integer, 5 is integer. When we sum the 3 and 5, the result is integer, so we can return integer. So this is second type of function. Now let's look at third type of function. Doesn't return anything but takes some parameters. Now you can see void. Void means it doesn't return anything, and add is function name, but it takes some parameters. It takes two parameters, x and y, and we haven't written any return statement. So this function does not return anything. This function basically what it does is it sums x and y and just print it. Now the fourth kind of function is it returns some value and also takes some parameters. For example, this function int integer, this function returns integer and it takes two integers as a parameter, x and y input, and it returns the sum of these two numbers. So these are the four types of function that we can find in C language. Doesn't return anything, does not take any parameters, return some value, doesn't take any parameters, doesn't return anything but take some parameters, return some value and take some parameters. Now, why do we need functions? Functions help us in reducing code redundancy. If functionality is performed at multiple places in software, then rather than writing the same code again and again, we create a function and call it everywhere. So that means if you want to repeat something, some code, basically you don't have to write it over and over again. You just write a function and put that repeating code in that function and just call it. So it will reduce your line of code basically, and it also reduce redundancy. Redundancy means unnecessary codes, no duplicate codes. You can reduce this redundancy by using function. And also function provide abstraction. For example, you can use library function without worrying about their internal working, because when you write a software, then you have to write lots of codes, and some codes you can't write. You have to call some library function, DLL function from other programmers. You can call system codes like kernel code or uh, system DLL files. That in this case you don't have to reinvent the wheel by writing each and every line of code again over again and again. So you just use you just import the DLL and just call the function in it. So and you don't have to know what is going on inside that function, which is basically known as abstraction. You just call it, it will work, you just call it, and you get what you want. And another reason why we use a function is to identify and isolate errors in program. When you write a program, there may be lots of errors, and when you know that there is an error in a function, you just isolate that error and you just correct that function so that uh, you can rectify and run your program better. And it is very easy if your error code is in one place rather than in lots of places. So function is very important concept in C programming language. Now let's see some practical example. I have written here some code. I have basically written four functions: add one, add two, add three, and add four. You can write same function name like I did in this example, add. You can do that in real program because it is function name is same like variable. You can redeclare the function. So I have to change the name. Later I will explain you about later in another video I will explain about function overloading, where you can write same name with different parameters and return type. Now I have explained to you that there are four kinds of function. So these are the four kinds of function that I have explained you before: add 1, add 2, add 3, and add 4. This first one is, it doesn't have return type. It has return type, void return type, but it doesn't return anything, and it doesn't take any parameter. So to execute this function, we call we call function calling in C language. How to do that? Programs always start at main function, so we have to go to main function. This is our main function. You can see this main is also function, is a kind of function. It has return type integer, and it doesn't take any parameter. So this function returns integer, so we have to return some integer. So return 0 I have written. That's why I have written 0. Return 0 basically returns integer 0, and this return value goes to operating system or whatever thing is calling this function. So in this case, main is called by operating system Windows 10. So this 0 is returned to operating system. Just remember like this for now. Now uh, to call this add one function, I just need to type the function name like this, add one. Okay, just like that, and just run this program. Start without debugging. We are not going to debug this program. As you can see, the result 8. So I have successfully called this function add one. To call the function, just write the name, just write the signature of the function. Signature in this case is add one and parentheses. So just write like this, add one and brackets. Now to call this add two, same process goes, add two, and just run this program. The program has run, and sorry, no, it's not this one. Let's run it again. Okay, program has run, but I'm not seeing any output. It's because in order to see some output on console, we have to write printf. So I cannot see any printf in add2, and not even in main. So that's why I'm not getting anything, just empty console. So to see the result, to see the return value, what I can do is you just print this return value like this, printf percentage d. Percentage d stands for integer. Now put this function inside this printf, and let's try again. Start without debugging. See, I can see the 8. I'm getting output because of this printf. Now let's call this add 3 as well. How to do that? Since this add 3 contains printf, so I don't need printf in main. I can just straightforward call add 3. But this add 3 contains parameters, so I must send the value x and y. So let's write let's send some value 3 and 10. Let's write 11. So I'm sending 3 and 11. 3 and 11, this is x, value of x, and this is value of y. So 3 goes to x and 11 goes to y. And what this function does is it sums these two numbers and print it. So I should get number 14. Yes. Now let's call the fourth one. This function returns integer, an integer, and it takes two integers, and it returns sum of those two integers. So what I have to do is, since it doesn't contain any printf statement, I have to write printf main printf %d and add 4 add 4, and then I have to send two integers. Let's send 5 and 5. So this 5 and 5 is parameters. It's like an input. It works like input, and return works like output. And the value returned from this function, I'm sending it to printf. So how do we explain this line? Yeah, it seems like complicated. Actually, it's very easy. First of all, add 4 is called, 5 and 5 is sent to x and y respectively. Then it sums x and y. The results become 10. And this return statement, what it does is it returns some value to whoever it was called by. Yeah. So in this case, add4 was called by main. You can see inside this main we have add4. That means the value returned is passed to main function. So the value which is returned from this function is passed to main, and main passes this function to printf function. This is also, printf is also function. As you can see here, printf is also function. And this printf also takes two parameters. One is string and another is this integer. So basically you can treat this add4 5, 5 as an integer. So that means, and then the result will be printed by this printf function. Let's see. I should get 10. I get 10. I got 10. So this is working. So that's how function works in C programming language. Functions are very important in C language. Without this function, our code will become very complex, very long, and impossible to maintain, and impossible for debugging, lots of things. So we have to use function every time when we do programming in C language. Now, just few moments ago, I talked about this abstraction thing, but I haven't shown you any example. Functions provide abstraction. For example, we can use library functions without worrying about their internal working. Now, let's comment this out, or let's just delete everything. I have another main here. Now you can see there is another function called message box a, which takes four parameters. Sorry. Uh, you can see the signature of this function, integer. So this function returns integer, and the function name is message box a, and it takes so many parameters like window handle and lpcstr, which is basically string. Another one lpcstr, and last one is integer. So I'm calling this function. This function actually is inside 32.dll, which is part of kernel. Windows 10 operating system. So I can directly call this operating system DLL file from my program. Message box A, null, hello world, online programming tutorials, and 0. And this main is returning 0 as well. So let's call it. Let's see what happens. Actually, this function is for the message box. Now my program is calling operating system DLL file. See, as you can see, online programming tutorials, hello world. I have successfully called kernel DLL function. So this is actually a kind of abstraction. You don't need to know how message box A works, no, because somebody has already written it. I just need to call it. I can call again, no. I can just copy it. I can call another message box as well. In this case, okay, whatever. Hello from Evan Dangol. I can just call it like this. Let's run. Hello world, the first one, and second one, hello from Evan Dangol. This is message box. That's how you do programming in C. Actually, for this message box A to work, we have to include this another header file, has include windows.h, because it will not work if you remove this uh, this header file, because this message box A is defined in this windows.h header file. Okay, thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope it helped you in some way. If it helps, if it has helped you, then please subscribe my channel and please like my video as well. Thank you very much.